Good morning, welcome to Board Game Barrister, our local game shop in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. It is Tuesday once again, and every Tuesday we get to play a game. Today we just played Power Plants from Kids Table Board Games and designer Adam Dalton. It's a game where you're going to send sprites out to try to control territory in the forest. We had an awesome time with it. I'm here with my fellow barristers Glenn, Ian, and Gordon, and we're going to talk about our game, but first we're going to talk about how to play. Welcome to Power Plants, a territory control game that's going to take place in this collective, ever-growing garden full of spell components, and we're trying to collect those components by pushing our opponents out of them and taking over as much territory as we can. When the game starts, we're going to pick 5 different plants that we're going to be playing with this game. Each of them is represented by one of these cards, but also a color of tile that we'll be using in the game. So for instance, the Tangle Thorns are on this card here. All the red tiles are Tangle Thorns. Now on a player's turn, they've got a couple of different goals. One of them is to control different territories of connected, contiguous plant types. So if I played this Tangle Thorn to extend this patch of Tangle Thorns here, now this patch is worth more points for whoever controls it at the end. So not only do I want to play tiles out into these, but I also want to control them by placing my fairies out onto them, which we'll talk about in a second. And in addition to adding your sprites out onto the board, it's also great to just collect gems at every opportunity that the game gives you, because gems are worth points at the end of the game. So the first thing each player is going to do on each of their turns is to look at those 2 tiles they've got and choose which of them they'd like to add to the garden. Once they've made that choice, they can add it anywhere they want to. It does not have to connect to any other matching plants or anything like that. But let's say that they wanted to connect these Tangle Thorns here and start creating a patch of Tangle Thorns out here in the garden. Once you've added your tile, we're going to place the wizard token onto that new plant, and that'll be relevant for some of the powers you get to use. Because the next thing you do once you place a new tile is you immediately activate a power for that tile, and each different plant type in the game has 2 different powers available to it. You choose one of these 2 to activate when you place that tile. The first for each plant is its sprout ability, so when you use a sprout ability, this is going to be based on the tile you just put down. For the Tangle Thorn, the sprout ability says that I get to add 3 sprites to any space adjacent to the wizard. So if I wanted to place my wizard there, I would also get to add 3 sprites to an adjacent space, and now I've got control of this Tangle Thorn patch. We'll look at the grow ability on the next player's turn, but for now, this player is going to end their turn by drawing 1 new tile out of the bag and then passing the wizard on to that next player. On our next player's turn, they might choose to do something like this, extending the deep root patch here. They'll place the wizard on their new tile. Now it's worth noting that many of the plants in this game have a little symbol on their card that means that you immediately get to add a sprite to the space you just added this tile. So we just placed this new deep root, that one's got that symbol, so we get a sprite for free. And if this player chooses to use the grow ability for their new tile they've placed, instead of looking at the ability of the tile we just placed, we're going to look at the grow ability for all of the tiles adjacent to the one that we just placed. So that would be this deep root here and this Tangle Thorn here. Whenever we're activating multiple grow abilities in the same turn, like we're about to do here, we're going to start at the top of our column of plants and activate the abilities in this order. So the deep root first and then the Tangle Thorn. Now our deep root's grow ability, so we're activating this tile here now, says that you get to add 1 sprite to a patch that is in a straight line from the wizard. So for instance, this player could add a new sprite into the deep root spot that they're actually activating because it's in a straight line from the wizard, and that's what matters for this ability. Next up is the Tangle Thorns ability, which just says to add a sprite to the wizard's patch. So that's yet another sprite in this patch we've just put down. So this player has established really good control of this deep root cluster here. So we're going to keep placing tiles around the table, activating either the sprout or grow abilities on each one of those until our bag runs out of tiles, and then it's the end of the game. So the one other thing to talk about is how this territory control actually works. We're going to look at each contiguous connected patch of each different plant type and score them up individually. So we've got an area of snapjaws here, an area of deep roots, so on and so forth, and what we're going to look at is which player has control of more of the tiles in each of those areas. So on the simple little board we're looking at right now, Pink has control of this entire area of Tangle Thorns because they control 1 spot and nobody else controls any. And yellow controls the deep roots here. They control both out of the 2 spots there are to be had there. Now it is worth noting that the number of sprites you have on any of these spots doesn't matter. It only matters that you're the player who still has sprites there, and nobody can ever share a spot with more than 1 sprite. So if, for instance, one player had 3 sprites on this Tangle Thorn and another had 1 sprite here, this is actually a tie. Both of them control exactly 1 tile. What do we do in the case of a tie? Well, we're going to look at the little numbers on these This one has a number 5, this one has a number 8, and the low numbers are more powerful. So actually, even though this player has only 1 sprite total, they get the victory and the territory control for this entire cluster here. And the more tiles that get added to a single area of connected plant type, the more points it's going to be worth in the end.
All right, so this is the 3rd time that I have played. I have played with 2 players, 3 players, and today with 4 players. And I have played with, you've got lots of variety in what you can play with. All of the times I have played, it has been with the easy plants, but with all of the abilities. The box will say 8 and up, 30 minutes, and that is not true in the way that I have played. Not close. Hour 15, there's a lot of decisions to make as you are playing with that many things going on. Their advice for beginners and young players is to play with only half of the powers and with a specific set of plants. All right, maybe if you do it that way, it could be half an hour. Certainly I would do that if I was playing with anybody younger than 12, but playing kind of just the basic game, 2, 3, 4 players, it's an hour. It's fantastic, and you get to do all sorts of great thinking in the game, but it's been an hour in my experience.
So I think one of the really interesting things for me about this game was the engagement that I had on other players' turns. I really cared a lot about what they were doing, not because it affected my gameplay too much. I wanted people to make the most optimum plays. It wasn't one of the games where I wanted them to make mistakes so I could win. I wanted to see what cool things they could do and the most effective things they can do and which one of those lines they wanted to take to score themselves points. And then when it got back to my turn, I had the board was completely changed from what I saw originally, so it allowed me to make those decisions too, and we ended up almost helping each other make the most optimal decisions or pointing out different ways to do things that felt super engaging across the board with all the other players. Even though I lost handedly, I still felt very engaged with what everybody else was doing, but when it came to me, with them being engaged on my turn. So
how long do this here?
I can put them into here and make it so like I have to fight over this thing.
Yeah, you could scoot this guy one and then scoot him one more with the next one.
You could, and blow me off of there.
That's true,
not bad.
yeah.
But then he's still got 2 on here.
Yeah.
Like
Or
moving
you
this
could
to
just-
here seems...
You've got an established force to do
No.
this fighting for you. You could make them do the work.
No, you can also be moving your guys into...
Oh, yeah.
Yes, I'm going to.
Huh.
So, all right. So, like I said, you're going to use only 5 plants when you play, and there are 8 available. So you're going to different plants each game because it's randomized. Plus, you have the different sprout and the different grow powers. And flip this over, and you have advanced or alternate plants, not advanced, but I would maybe say advanced, but alternate plants. So the replayability is big, big because
Functionally infinite,
yeah. I mean, you can have different plays every single time you play just by saying we're going to swap out this plant for that. I mean, you swap out one plant, it greatly changes. You take out the Snapdragon for something a little nicer or something that gives you gems. It really changes how the game plays entirely.
The one thing we noticed big time in a 4-player game, and probably in any number of players, but more so with 4 or 5, is that it's real swingy. Like, the amount of territory you control between the end of your turn and the time it comes back around to you could change drastically. You could have control of a totally different part of the forest because of people moving your stuff around, and suddenly you're invested in the deep roots when you weren't before, and weird stuff like this, which turned it into a very, tactical, opportunistic game. You're trying to find opportunities to either secure a foothold somewhere that looks unappealing to other people to try to knock you out of, or just, like I did a couple of times, make plays that are just going to give you gems, because you know you can count on gems at the end of the game, but you have no ability to count on your fairies to stay where you put them, because somebody else is going to knock you out of there. You know what? I'm sick of all this. I haven't looked at this ability in ages. Look at this. Move one sprite from a field next to the wizard onto an adjacent patch, then gain 1 gem for each sprite now in that patch.
Why?
Oh, because now...
I get 7 gems.
Oh, yeah, okay.
I'm so sad that I started fighting people when I could have just been doing stupid stuff like this the whole game.
And so this becomes one of those games we've talked about a couple of times where you can put in a lot of extra thought to have a marginal advantage, and here it's almost like you can put in a lot of extra strategy, a lot of extra planning for a real marginal advantage, right? You can also just come in with very little long-range planning and do great.
if you take other territory control games like say Risk, everybody knows you're piling a bunch of stuff up to secure your positioning on it. And this one I felt was a lot less about positioning and a lot more about what actions can I take to change the board in a way that's going to be advantageous to me and disadvantageous to my opponents, versus I'm definitely going to be playing all of my stuff on the red tiles, or I'm definitely going to be playing all of my stuff on these tiles to make sure that I've got my foothold somewhere on the map. And I tried that strategy and it didn't work too great for me. But it's something that you live and learn. So I like that it's the decisions you make are really changing who controls what territories at different times in the game. There was twice where Gordon had full secure control over one of the nightshades or one of the fright shades, and all of us took actions to move his stuff out, and he had nothing left when it got back to his turn. So he was like, well, I'm taking a different route, and got to play another side of the board. So pretty neat.
So this is a really cool game for a group of people, and the numbers don't matter that much. 2 all the way up to 5 is really great, but you do have to be interested in competing actively and aggressively with each other, because it's a game about controlling territory and pushing and knocking other people out of that territory. You're going to be capturing other people's fairies, actively destroying them by smashing two other people's fairies against each other, which destroys them. So it's not a nice hand-holding game. It is a game where you're going to try to ruin each other's day and destroy each other off the board. You can do that in a nice, compassionate way, but it is a game where you're trying to take over the board. Hey, and I think that about does it for Power Plants. We had a really good time smashing each other to smithereens in this game. It was really fun, so we hope you had a fun time watching as well. And as always, if you want to see our weekly videos every week when we post them, hit that subscribe button, hit that like if you liked it, and leave a comment if you got a comment. We've got all the cool games like Power Plants in our online store, so check that out, and we will see you next time. Thanks for watching.